just joining us, I have Jeremy Blum here with me to give me the skinny on all of the delicious lore behind Dritz Duerden, the Companions of the Hall, and the settings and story things that go with them, and how you can use them at your table for your home games. And I am very excited for this next part of our journey because I would love to know all about Menzoberranzan, a place I, as a player, have not spent a lot of time. I mean, you could say maybe it was a good idea for me to stay out of the Underdark and away from the terrifying city of intrigue where they worship the Spider Queen's Queen of Spiders. Lolth is, what's her technical title?
I think it's I'm going to say the Queen of Spiders, or Spider Queen Loth, yeah.
Okay, just making sure, because once I started saying it out loud, it suddenly sounded wrong to me. But please, Jeremy, tell us, what's the basic gist of the city of Menzoberranzan, and why might we want to go there on our adventures?
So Menzoberranzan essentially outlined in the Dark Elf trilogy by R.A. Salvatore was actually based on the Godfather books, because R.A. Salvatore was influenced by this idea of, the five families of New York City all kind of warring and competing with each other, and he decided to create a fantasy spin on that, where this Underdark city, one of the most famous cities in the Underdark, it's filled with various Drow families who are all intense, very fanatical supporters of the Spider Queen, Loth. Recent tweaks to Forgotten Realms lore have said that they've essentially been corrupted by Loth. And not all Drow are like this at all. There are other societies that we don't know of who are completely free of Drow's influence, but of Loth's influence. But for Menzoberranzan is steeped in worship of the Spider Queen. If you harm any spiders in the city, you could be taken and sacrificed and killed. All of the families are ruled over by a matron mother. It's a very matriarchal society. Men are generally regarded as inferior beings, and the highest ranking women from each family get to go on and study to be priestesses of Loth. So it's all about praising the Spider Queen, really carrying out her wishes. And houses will often vie for power in the eyes of Loth and try to destroy each other. So there's a whole lot of backstabbing, shenanigans, and political, just political stuff going on in the alleyways of Menzoberranzan. It's very much a tough environment to grow up in, and Dritz managed to get out.
So the official description that we have right now of the most recent description of Menzoberranzan from Wizards is that deep in the Underdark lies the city of Menzoberranzan, stronghold of the cult of Loth. This Udadrow?
I think it's Udadrow, but I don't know. This is a new name that they've recently come up with. So.
Which is it's very exciting. I love the things I've heard about where they're going with the lore, but we will get there. This Udadrow society has become corrupted by the malicious goddess who teaches them to despise all outsiders. The subterranean city of spiders is the bastion of the Udadrow, Drow elves who became tainted by Loth's insidious teachings. Udadrow society values ruthlessness, obedience, and a burning hatred of surface dwellers. Menzoberranzan's young warriors raid surface villages, proving their worth by how many elves they destroy. It was once widely believed that all Drow elves lived below ground and worshipped Loth, but truths that have long been buried are now beginning to come to light. And I'm just going to throw in, I'm pretty sure if you want to know more about that, you should probably check out Starlight Enclave, which is coming out August 3rd, which will be the newest of the books in this long series from R.A. Salvatore. And I just find that personally exciting. But before we find out who isn't like this, let's find out what we might find in Menzoberranzan. I love that map that was just pulled up. Can you tell us about some of the major figures inside Menzoberranzan?
Yeah, so the biggest house in Menzoberranzan is House Barnre. I've actually never been able to pronounce this very well.
Bainre?
Baenre. Bainre? I'm not sure. But they've been the biggest house of Menzoberranzan for generations. The current matron mother is a woman named Quenthel, who has been a presence in most of these most of these Dritz books, starting from Homeland and going on to current lore. They contain the most influence, and they have watched over and ruled the city, pretty much near the top ever since its founding. Then you have Tir Brech, which is the Academy of Menzoberranzan. That is the place where the priestesses learn their trade. That is the place where the fighters, you have an academy called Melee Magthier, I believe. The pronunciation, it's up to your own interpretation here. But the Academy School for Elite Warriors, and Dritz is a member of, he was a member of this academy where he grew up. His father, Zaknafen Duarden, was a major teacher at this academy. And then you have Sorcery, which is another one of the 3 academies in Tir Brech, which is where a lot of the male Drow, they go to study, those who have the capacity for magic. And the highest station they can hope to achieve is usually a sorcerer in the in Sorcery, the Academy School for Mages. And so then you have a couple other interesting features in the city. You have this massive pillar that actually illuminates the city. It's called Narbundel. And what happens is that mages from Tir Brech, they go and then they light up this pillar every day, and then it slowly dies down as night falls. And that's how people tell the passing of time in Menzoberranzan. So the best way to imagine the city is really this huge underground cavern filled with luminescent mushrooms and this gigantic spire, this pillar that's like a pulsating lava lamp, just illuminating everything. And then you have the Drow carrying out their dark deeds and their malicious backstabbing machinations under this eerie light. Other interesting features in the city is that you have Bregan Diarth, which is kind of this wet work, assassination, smuggling group that it manages to exist on the sidelines of Drow society in Menzoberranzan thanks to Jarl Axel. And Jarl Axel is probably the second most famous Drow in Forgotten Realms lore after Dritz. He is essentially a roguish guy who managed to... Yeah. Sorry.
For Jarl Axel, this is one where if you have been playing through a lot of 5th edition adventures, you might not have met Dritz yet, but you might have met Jarl Axel. Can you tell us just a quick bit, who is he and why is he so interesting?
Yeah, so Jarl Axel is this magnificent rogue, basically, this sly guy who he showed up in Out of the Abyss and I believe Waterdeep Dragon Heist, and he's always kind of lurking around the sidelines in Menzoberranzan. You can tell what type of character he is by the fact that he wears an eye patch. He doesn't need this eye patch. He switches which eye he wears it on, depending on what time of day it is. But it also protects him from certain magical effects depending on which eye he's wearing it on. So he's very much a guy who's on his own side, which probably makes him one of the most interesting characters here. So this society that he founded, Bregan Diarth, it's basically a group of outcasts, fugitive Drow or Drow that can't really rise up above their station, and including some people from the surface that he has befriended. And what they do is they make money. They prevail. They use all the chaos and political backstabbing in Menzoberranzan to their own advantage, and that's how they manage to survive in a very harsh city. And Jarl Axel's influence extends beyond Menzoberranzan into the surface world. He has, his fingers in pies and like Waterdeep and Luskan around various points. And he is also very much a character you could come into contact with. In fact, you will meet him in some of the official adventures. And he is a character that could potentially serve as an ally or an enemy or a quest giver or just a very intriguing disguise-wearing Drow elf who is there to chuckle at you as you try to figure out exactly what his plans are.
An NPC who will get a kick out of not helping you. Do you have any roleplay advice or DM advice on using Jarl Axel other than keep your mind open to all those possibilities of where he might land?
Jarl Axel is very much a neutral character who primarily cares about his own survival and his own self. He can certainly be sympathetic, and he's very sympathetic towards Dritz's struggle to survive on the surface world amongst people who initially hate him. He's also quite villainous in some ways as well, in that if you cross him, if you mess with his affairs, he will not hesitate to put a dagger in your eye. And so that's kind of the fine balance you want to walk when you roleplay him. He can be an anti-hero, and in fact, R.A. Salvatore wrote a whole bunch of books about him going on adventures with Artemis Entreri, who was this assassin character, kind of like the anti-Dritz. And these two guys, these two kind of like Laurel and Hardy anti-heroes of the Forgotten Realms, eventually became pretty popular also, because people want to read about the so-called evil characters doing interesting things. And so I would say think about it in those terms. Like Jarl Axel's on his own side, but he can very much be a great guy that you can have as a contact if you play your cards right, or he can be your worst enemy.
Are there any other places you might end up inside Menzoberranzan that we should keep aware of, either that we met in Out of the Abyss, or that come from the books, or that just stand out to you?
Yeah, so two of the most interesting places I think in Menzoberranzan are actually the more diverse sections of the city. The city has a big trading bazaar, and this is where you are going to see other races of the Underdark and maybe even the surface world. You'll probably see Durgar here. You might see Illithids. You might see Darrow. And probably even, some human traders who have the guts to go down to the Underdark and trade. It's not necessarily an unforeseen circumstance to see a wealthy surface dweller down in the Underdark selling their goods. And that's actually a great idea for a campaign, in my opinion. Like all the players are like merchants who are working for some like big trading company, and you're like, your mission is to go down to the Underdark and make some coin in Menzoberranzan and actually sell stuff to the Drow because
Just a
making money
quick trading
beats
trip.
all.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
What's the worst? What could possibly go wrong?
The city is very prejudiced against surface elves, but maybe those surface elves are wearing hats of disguise, or maybe you could have a party composed of hobgoblins or bugbears. Great chance to use some of the less commonly seen races in fifth edition. So that's the first place I think that is a good setting for potential adventure hooks. The other place is the Brarin, which is a destitute district in the city that's mostly full of escaped slaves and Drow that are running from the rule of law in Menzoberranzan. Both of these places I think are intriguing to me because they are more diverse than just Drow, and there's potential for a lot of very roguish missions and kind of survival in the darkest and bleakest city in the Underdark to thrive there.
And it gives you the opportunity to make if you're looking for missions that will require subterfuge and sneakiness and all of that, it gives you automatic built-in stakes of being able to communicate what exactly might be waiting for you if this goes wrong.
Yeah, very much so. And I think, just because the Menzoberranzan is known as the city of the Drow, or the Uda Drow now, as they're called, don't necessarily assume that you can't play as another race or create an entire campaign where you're like a family of bugbears just trying to survive in like the worst district in Menzoberranzan. Like that's a great storytelling potential right there. Or you could play as Brigand Earth mercenaries under the command of Jarl Axel, and you have to go to these other districts, and you might have to communicate with different Underdark races in order to, do business.
Fantastic. Do you have any more tips for incorporating this lore, or things that you would want to cover on Menzoberranzan?
I would say definitely look at Out of the Abyss for the most current, up to date, stats, and there's a lot of adventure hook tables in that book, as well as a lot of other locales in the Underdark that you can use if you have any section of your campaign set in Menzoberranzan. If you want more information on the city, I do recommend the Dark Elf trilogy by R.A. Salvatore. And then there's also older D&D products. Second edition had a great box set simply called Menzoberranzan, and fourth edition also has a very solid book called Menzoberranzan: The City of Intrigue. And the lore in there is pretty up to date and will definitely help you get into the mindset of, okay, how do I run this city? What sort of challenges can I present to my players? And barring that, you could also just go and read The Godfather and see, how R.A. Salvatore got into the mindset of creating this fantastical version of, the five families in New York City.
I am a little bit curious, actually. Just for folks who might have run a lot of dungeon crawls but haven't tried something like intrigue between powerful families. Do you have any advice for someone who might be taking on their first kind of? I love the idea of five warring families, but I don't know how to make that into a game my players can get involved in.
Absolutely. The families in Menzoberranzan, they are always trying to rise so that they can gain power in the eyes of Loth. So the easiest way to do it, you don't even have to worry about lore. Just make up your own family. There's a whole bunch of lower tier families in the city that are always looking for instances to rise, and that could be carrying out a very covert assassination of a high-ranking member of another family, waiting for the right moment when a family is out of town to maybe attack their stronghold and seize power. You can do a lot of kind of, War of the Rose, Game of Thrones, the Tudors, just a lot of political dealings. You don't really have to worry about lore. Just make a lower level family that nobody suspects to be to be the sort of espionage outlet that they are, and then just have them go to town on a higher level family that least expects it, and then play out the consequences.
That's fantastic. That is great advice for sneaking into the world of Menzoberranzan and Underdark intrigue. And you mentioned already some places people might want to go if they want to know more. I will shout out, just in case you didn't catch the first half of this, if you want to know more about this setting and these characters, you want to check out Dark Alliance, the video game that just came out, which features the Companions of the Hall, which will give you a way into the world that might eventually lead you down into the Underdark with Menzoberranzan. And there is a new R.A. Salvatore novel coming out, which I just find tremendously exciting, August 3rd, called Starlight Enclave, where you will suddenly have, I'm guessing, a lot of material to contrast with the City of Intrigue, as it seems like, are going to get our first really substantial look at a different Drow civilization, which sounds
That'll be interesting.
very fun.
Yeah. That'll be interesting. And also remember, R.A. Salvatore has a bajillion Drizzt novels, many of which I have in front of me right now. You can find them in convenient paperback form wherever fine books are sold. Look,
Where would you start? Would you actually start at Crystal Shard or jump in at one of the later ones?
You can start at Crystal Shard if you want to. If you've never ever read a D&D book at all, I would say start with Crystal Shard, because it is that traditional D&D saga. Start with the Icewind Dale trilogy. Remember, it was written in 1988, so a lot of it will kind of seem tropey, and a lot of it will be like, wow, these guys put no thought into their characters. Well, I mean, it's because they were designed to be sort of iconic characters, but it's still very, very entertaining.
A million characters trying to do this. I love that effect when I come to things where I'm like, oh, right, trope setter. I see. Yeah.
If you're a little bit more familiar with D&D lore already and would like to read the books in order, you can start with the Dark Elf trilogy, Homeland, and they're all rebranded this way as the Legend of Drizzt books. They're numbered, and so I would potentially start with that one. But for folks that have never ever read a D&D novel, the Icewind Dale trilogy, Crystal Shard, is a decent place to start, because it'll just dive you right into that kind of like traditional like party of adventurers fighting against giants, fighting against an evil wizard kind of mindset. And that's what you should expect when you open the book for the first time.
And if you want to be totally charmed and a little bit creeped out by this world and its characters, you should also check out the Sleep Sound animated short that they just did, because Benedict Cumberbatch narrates a lullaby that retells this origin story of Drizzt and the Companions in just a very beautifully efficient piece of storytelling. And I'm just throwing that out there because I think everyone should watch it because it was great.
Great narration by Benedict Cumberbatch.
Jeremy, thank you so much for joining me today. This was absolutely perfect. I am very excited to put these things into action at my table. Where can people find more of your thoughts or your work or your writing?
You can see most of my writing under my Twitter account at Pixelgrotto, and there's a link there to my blog. I'm the last person in the world who still has a Tumblr blog and uses it to write long form stuff. You can also read my articles on D&D Beyond. Hopefully that article on Canterbury will be up soon. You can check out your stat block, and there will be more coming, hopefully on other iconic locations in the Forgotten Realms that can give me an excuse to pull out all of these books that I have with me. So many books, just I can't hold all the books.
I am delighted by it, and tragically cannot climb through the screen and start borrowing your books, which is probably for the best for the integrity of your library. But thank you so much. This has been such a blast. I hope. Let us know your thoughts on tips that you might have, folks. Please leave comments, tweet me. I just love hearing from folks after these on advice you might have for folks bringing these to life at your own tables. And we will see you next time on D&D Beyond.
It's D&D.